Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are continuing painting Glencoe and some of the areas around it in my my inspirational photographs from last summer. Today we are looking at one of the three sisters at Glencoe, which is translated as Black Ridge, and it actually looks quite black here. We had the storm coming just over the ridge. We went a bit more further up, and then the heavens opened. So we had to dash all the way back. Didn't have a massive walk that day, maybe a couple of hours, but it was fantastic to see the light changing, the clouds coming, atmosphere was fantastic. Right, so we're painting today on the orange background because we have loads of lovely greens and they will support our orange. I also have a black and white image which will give us a bit of a reference what will be the darker stones. So if we'll have a look at that, our lighter stone is probably going to be our clouds and some of the stones for the path. We've got a bit of rocky area here as well. So in comparison to my white paper and the borders here, the sky and those rocks, they're not white, but they're light. They're in a light category, okay? My darkest mountain here, if I were to squint my eyes, I can put the top of this mountain, top of the left-hand side mountain, maybe something tiny bit down further. There is a stream there, a bit of a waterfall. So those might be the most dark areas for the paintings. So even they are not the same in darkness, but they might be within the same category of the most dark, okay? And then everything else will be more of the talking about the slopes of both mountains, the greens, those grasses will be all medium darkness. And again, they will be all subdivided into slightly lighter, slightly darker options in there. So when we'll be thinking about color, we'll be also referring to our tones. Now on my palette, I have some white, cadmium yellow, ochre, cadmium red. If you have cadmium orange, that's fine as well. Lisarian crimson, or anything towards the pink from reds. Deep violet, ultramarine, cerulean blue, or cobalt blue. That will be fine as well. Emerald green, or any versions of similar looking color. We might have had phthalo green or viridian. Those are your other options. Payne's grey or any other black. We'll be using it in small quantities just to mix with other colors, but Payne's grey got a little bit of blue in it. Now my two optional colors are also buff titanium and bluey grey, or greyish blue, I've forgotten. Let me have a look. For a moment I've forgotten. Where is it? Blue grey. Okay. If you don't have them, we can mix them. Buff titanium could be mixed with white, ochre, and very small amount of violet. Blue grey, we can mix it from a bit of ultramarine, Payne's grey, and plenty of white. Okay, we don't need a lot of it, but sometimes pre-mixed colors, by the time we've mixed the proportions right, sometimes it's quicker to have the actual pre-mixed tubes with the paint. Okay. Right, I also have a little cloth for today, a palette knife, a little wooden wedge for scratching some of the surface and playing with that. And I'm going to start with my composition. I'm going to use my synthetic round brush. Here's my terps as well. I quite like sketching with terps, so they're not too oily. And we keep some of the lines a bit more than just using our 3 oils mixture. Right, so a little bit of tips, some violet. Violet goes really well on our orange. So I'm going to dilute my violet make it nice and runny. And let's plan our shapes. So I'm going to start with identifying maybe a big V shape for the valley here. We've got that slope here, and we've got that lovely slope just almost where the stream is starting to pick up and going towards the right. So I'm going to find an approximate diagonal for all of that ridge. Okay, I can decide if I need to drop it down afterwards, but I'm just doing it approximately. Okay, so we can amend things, we can move things about. Okay, and I want to find where that V shape is. Right, so if I were to, hold on, a bit too watery paint. If I were to divide the height of my picture into half, okay, where that V shape, kind of where the root of that V is going to be, maybe just above my halfway through point. So this is my halfway through point, maybe approximately somewhere here. So that might be somewhere here, okay, maybe higher. Again, I can tweak it. This is just to give us an idea as a reference point. So we might have something going up and sloping out. Okay. Okay. I'm also going to plan my darker peak, maybe not as close to my border of the painting. If I can have tiny bit more space for it, so I might drop the peak a little bit lower, but I do like how steep it is. So if I'll plan the top somewhere here. Now in comparison to the width of the painting, if this is halfway through point, my peak is much more towards the right hand side, yeah? So if I were to mark my board here, approximately, okay, so my peak is actually going to be somewhere here. So maybe that might be too big space here for me. Okay. Maybe my valley will need to be moved about. So maybe somewhere here. And maybe this space could open up a little more. Okay. And again, I'll establish some of the silhouettes for the tops, and then I can decide if I can move it slightly back as well. So let's find maybe the silhouette of our mountains approximately. We have right and left shoulders. Which one is a little bit more? I think the right shoulder goes tiny bit more deep, and then we've got a lovely kick there of the rock, exposed rock. I think maybe that line will have to go lower for me. Okay. Sometimes line is a harder shape to see, so a lot harder to see. So using a little bit of shading, applying just a little bit of darkness might be just enough for us to find that silhouette. Okay. And then I can decide, okay, can I define my shape for the mountain? So I'm using very diluted violet, very, very diluted. And I'm using Dubh, so when I'll start introducing color, it shouldn't be influencing it too much. Worst case scenario, if you apply it too much, let's say you put too much paint in there, you can always wipe it. Once you've seen the silhouette of it and it feels a good shape, we can wipe it off as well. Okay, doesn't have to be present in there. Right, I wanted to have a look now on what's below that mountain. They've got more of a stone, rocky debris, and some of the very large rocks. In the distance, they look quite small, but close by, they're massive, huge, and they started being overgrown by vegetation. Now, my V shape has changed. My waterfall is actually going to be changing its placement. I'm going to move this line towards the right now. Let's have a look, maybe somewhere here. Okay. Well, I don't want my mountain peak. There's this big rock here and the waterfall being on a perfect vertical line. So if needed, I might deliberately make this rock. It just looks a little bit too similar in the proportions of the peak of the mountain. I might just deliberately make it smaller or even almost like break it down a bit more. So I want that shape to be a dominant one. And then I might put my stream slightly off that center as well. So we're not photographers. If we can amend things and improve certain layouts, I would like to encourage you to do that. Okay, so that might be somewhere there. And now I want to have a look at my silhouette of, well, at the positive space of the sky. It's given me almost like an awkward W shape, yeah, where the sky meets the mountains. So that will help me to perhaps create more of a slope on the right. Okay, so we just see it a bit better here. And I think I'm happy with this one to remain as it is. Okay. So if we sketching our mountains and we more or less ended up with something like this, yeah, we're looking at, okay, one side is bigger than the other, that's good. Is one is slightly deeper and one is slightly higher, that's good. Can we vary anything else in there? Or can we have it, well, I prefer to have that simplicity and but that variety as well. But if you were to do something more, okay, one shape and then maybe another shape of a similar widths, of a similar depths, it might be a bit more boring, okay? Of course, we might have change the shape of the mountain. So try to have that variety, yeah? That's my arrows, they're meant to be arrows. Okay, and also that depth, slightly different changes there. Sorry, it doesn't show too much. Okay, it's just a bit wet. Right. Next, let's have a look at some other big shapes. So our big diagonal line, we can make it, we probably, if we were to take a ruler, we probably will find a direct, perfect line for it. But visually, even if it reads more or less straight line, there wouldn't be a straight line. There will be loads of parallel lines, which might be breaking down into slight variety of color, tiny bit of depth. And also, if we were deliberately changing that diagonal to maybe bending it with using straight lines and just gently, gently, gently changing it, we might have more pleasing to eye view. So I'm almost changed one shape, sorry, one line direction, another one, and then almost returning it back. Okay, and that might give me that extra light in there, or maybe some extra, maybe texture for some of the rocky areas. Okay, and maybe in the further end we'll have the water, the stream and the waterfall coming that way. Okay. Right, once we're happy with that, let's have a look at our path. So we've got key elements at the back. So let's have a look at the key elements of our path. Now, I'm going to outline the shape of my path on my black and white image, just to give you a little bit more of an idea of the contours. Okay, the path is not perfect. You've got some bigger boulders next to it. So this is almost like a wall next to it. But the flatter stones going that way are mainly on that shape of the path. Okay, that's just behind this rock. Okay, somewhere here, and then that path might be coming up somewhere here, maybe a bit more this way. Again, I'm just taking some of the extra rocks in front of us. So I'm interested in the main direction of these steps, broken steps, more of the rocky formations of those steps, and the approximate layout of the path. What's very easily could be done is we can turn these rocks into almost a derelict castle. We don't want that. We don't want it to turn into a wall. We want them to be steps and a path. So we need to focus on some larger texture and structure of the steps. Even if they're not perfect, if we can try to have them into some sort of order, that will be better. Right, but let's start with the overall shape. Now I need to finish my mountain here a little bit. I might just bring this finishing end here for that darkness, and then leaving a little bit of space. Might be that those steps coming out from somewhere there, and it's harder to do it all the way right. So let's do, okay, we started a little bit here. Can we find some more diagonals here for the big shape here? Okay, it might be easier for us to move them about. Okay, find where it might be arriving. So try not to make it, oh, I have to find it all right and perfect and the right width and the right bend in the right place. Give yourself that leeway of making adjustments and making mistakes and moving things about to adjust things what feels better for you. Okay, maybe that's a little bit somewhere here. We can wipe things off if we don't like them. Okay, now I'm going to see if I need to have a better bend here. I've got that lovely rock. You know, that lovely rock. It's almost like a little monument standing here. Little. Okay, so I don't need that line anymore. So maybe I'll place that rock somewhere here. It gives me more of a reference point of where my path might be. Okay. Maybe a little bit higher. If you want to move it about, that's okay as well. Again, we're not photographers. You are allowed to move things about and see how it's supports our picture. The most important thing with our path and the whole of this slope is it's become our entry point into the picture, and we started to move up, and then we started to follow our mountain ridge, and then we started to come down with a waterfall, coming back down the diagonal of the darkness of the stream, staying in the rocks, and hopefully again connecting to our path and having more of that swirl, more of a continuous composition. So without finishing my my steps, I want to now find maybe these rocks, which will also be an entry point for my painting. So let's find some of these approximate shapes of the rocks, and also their base, yeah, which will have that bit more of a diagonal because they are on a slope. We can do more definition of the silhouettes later. Okay, maybe even a tiny bit lower somewhere here. Sometimes using the lines of a similar diagonal to a slope, to a ridge, to a direction, it will just naturally give us that connection. It might not be the rocks themselves, it might be shadows, it might be light on the grasses. There will be some smaller connecting stones to it as well, but I might just leave that one out for now. Right. I also wanted to see if my path, I just need to go, sorry, path, my stream and that deeper end kind of part of the bank of the stream, the right hand side bank. So I'm getting it slightly darker so I see that terrain there. Something is getting lighter here and maybe again tiny bit more darker. Yeah, don't want these lines, they are my supportive lines. Okay, so without finishing one end, another end, I'm doing it a little bit everywhere. Okay, I'm trying to find the little bit of the puzzle coming in together. There's no point of me doing all the steps, suddenly finding out it's too high or too low. The shape needs to be adjusted or something else needs to come in. Right, so I'm going to come back to these top mountains and maybe have a look at the most dark shapes of them. Got little divisions of them here, sub darker shapes. Okay, I think that's mine. Is that too dark, too low? No, I think it's okay. Because I drop my sky lower, so I'll drop my mountain lower to have more sky. That mountain suddenly looks slightly taller than on the photo, which is fine again. Might have a little dent in here. And I'm also thinking of the slope. If I were to follow one of the water corroded, almost like paths, but just corroded areas, corroded slopes. Yeah, maybe this one is almost coming towards us. Okay, that's giving me more understanding. This is more vertical. This is getting flatter. That dips in. Okay, and then something comes out. Okay, and then it opens up somewhere here. Okay. Right, so now I can have a look back at my path and see if I can get more exciting shape out of it. I'm happy with that. Maybe somewhere here I'll do a slightly more exciting bend. So maybe this rock is here, maybe not as tall. It's all under the grasses. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm quite happy. I think I can bring even that one even further out. So looking how much space I have here on the right, bottom right, might give me an idea how much further those steps are going to be. So it's good to draw on one picture and keep another one clear, so then you can have that reference. Whatever I painted over, I might not see as much details in there. Okay, so now let's find some of these bigger shapes of the steps. Okay, let's deliberately plan them much bigger at the front. Instead of counting them all, I'm going to do a couple of steps at the bottom, a couple of directions or steps, directions of the steps midway. Okay, maybe somewhere there. And much smaller, and they're just getting lost more. There's more shapes of color than just individual lines. I think maybe even a tiny bit changing direction. I think they're tiny bit more leaning that way. Okay. Maybe these steps will be slightly wider. So again, this will be my good time to compare it. Maybe these steps will be, let's actually count how many approximately. Okay, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 steps up to my bigger rock here. So maybe I do need to have a slightly, actually that's about 4, 1, 2, 3, 4-ish. Okay. Okay, that's a rock comes out somewhere here. So there is no point for me drawing them all. Once I'll start blocking my colors, I'm going to lose all those lines. So as long as I'm aware of ranges of gaps, and I'm giving myself a little reminder where they're going to change, that will be enough. What I might do, I might put a couple of larger rocks on the side, but again, it probably will be easier for me to do it with the brush and color. But some of the large shapes we can identify. So for example, this rock is lying flat. Okay, and I can clean a bit more the lines within it. Okay, approximately. If you see another dominant shape of a rock and you want to use that instead, that's absolutely fine. It's almost like a little barrier of them. Okay, now they all will be slightly different size, so when we simplify them into similar sizes, well, be careful. Sometimes it's start to look like a pattern rather than a group of rocks. And I'm not too worried now. I just put a box and it's almost similar width, similar height, similar, yeah. Will it remain the same at the end? Probably not. But again, by the time I put color for that rock, by the time I put color around it, it will be changing. Okay. And what I can also see, there is a little more of a group of stones, rocks, kind of as a diagonal. I'm just doing some dabs, dots. They kind of connect into this group. So the stones were probably breaking down and rolling down. So maybe a tiny bit more higher, that whole line of them. And again, they're not going to be the same in size. I will paint them as I go, but that is my extra probably line for a group of rocks. I'll make a couple of them tiny bit dark. I'm not going to lose them too quickly. Okay. So in a way, the less details we have, the better. As long as our picture given enough information to us personally, yeah. To somebody else, it might not mean as much, but as long as it describes enough forms or shapes or breaks down the color or just gives us an approximate understanding of that space, what that valley is doing, what happens there, what's happened that way. Okay, that would be good. Right, I think my sketch is ready. Just gonna wipe a tiny bit my hair. So I can clean my brush. I can use some tips. Clean it on my tissue. Now I've hardly used the violet. The paint is so diluted, it shouldn't be influencing my further layers of color. If it's too thick, I would hardly recommend you to wipe things off. Mine is just so thin, it's almost, if it's not totally drying and soaking in into my primed orange layer, it's it's not going to run, or it's not going to cause me a lot of issues once I'll start introducing color. Right, so I'm gonna go to get started using slightly older brush. It could be a flat brush or um, any other medium-sized brush will be fine. Round one or flat will be fine. The reason I want it rough is because I want to have more softer or more, I don't want precise strokes. I want something to be able to press on a brush and kind of drag the color across. So this is just a clean brush here, so I'm just practicing some of the movement I will be doing. So how about if we first, I'm just going to cover my tips with the lid. If I were to use my 3 oils, and I'm going to paint just clean oil on my sky. Okay, so those are mainly my clouds. Not much of a clear sky showing now. Well, actually, there isn't any. So I'm going to paint that. You can just see a slightly darker orange as the surface become damp. So it's I'm not overly painting it so everything is super runny. If it runs, that's okay. But that's a transparent layer. Okay, transparent layer. Just to give me lovely oily surface. And what I'm going to do next, I want to use my blue-gray. So if you don't have blue-gray, go for some white, ultramarine, and a little bit of Payne's gray. We're looking for a very much pale color. So loads of white in it, more blue than gray will be ideal. But if I were just to use my blue-gray, what I'm doing at the moment, I'm just rubbing the paint into a runny oil within my bristles. So it's becoming loaded more evenly. And also the paint becomes more runnier. So if I were just to put a stroke, it's quite transparent because it's not, the viscosity of it is it's quite liquid like, yeah. Plus my surface is very wet. So what I want to do, I just want to have a little play. I just want to have a little rub into that surface where some of the paler maybe parts of the cloud are going to be. Okay, just want to have a little play, press on that stroke. Okay. So that gives us an opportunity to start seeing a little bit of orange, maybe quite a bit of orange at the moment. But I'm going to start making the color slightly deeper. So if I were to put, this is just an example, if I were to put direct blue-gray on my current cloud, I will have to do a number of strokes for the paint to stay there. That's how oily my surface is. And that color is much lighter than those transparent strokes, because transparent strokes also use the darkness of the orange background. Okay, so that blue-gray as it is much lighter. So I'm just going to wipe it off. This is just was an example to show you. Okay, so I want to make my blue-gray darker. So I'm going to increase the darkness by adding more ultramarine and more Payne's gray. This is very dark. This is not what I want, but it's not a lot of paint. It's mainly runny paint. So I'm going to mix it first, and then I'm going to add more blue-gray to that. Okay, that's better. Again, I can test it. I can put a little stroke somewhere on the side here. Okay, that's looking much darker. Yeah, remember that stroke which was close by. And we have the storm just behind that ridge. So I want to paint slightly, well, small amount of that darkness into that cloud is just about to go over and bring that rain. And I'm going to bring some of that color into my oily surface, so it's at the moment looks similar, but that's a little bit more thicker paint and that's much more diluted with the oil. So when it settles in, it's probably going to be paler. It will show more orange. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to wipe all of that one off. Okay, so I placed some of the darkness and I'm wiping the whole brush off. I can have tiny bit of tips on it just to clean it a little more. Okay. And I want some fresher white. So I need a tiny bit of oil on my brush so my brush is not super dry. So my brush is not clean, but by the time I put some white on it, it will clean itself out. It will absorb that a little bit of gray paint, and it appears quite clean straight away now. If I press on my brush, there will be loads of darkness coming out from the root, but I don't have to do too much of that. Okay, so that's my semi-runny white. So I want to bring some of that white into my sky. Well, sorry, into my clouds. Not too much white. I can always make it darker. There are plenty of other grays around to smudge with. So I'm just gonna play. Okay, that's quite light. Maybe I will use a tiny bit more gray from there. Okay, that's slightly darker one. That's better. Remember when I was analyzing the path and the sky and the clouds, I said they're not fresh white, so that's what I meant by that. I don't want it to be fresh white. Okay, just checking my color if that's white, or I can wipe that fresh white off, or I can just paint over it a bit more. So I like the messy brush to create some funky strokes, a bit more playful, a bit more wacky, a bit more press and lift, a bit more of a press on the brush and get maybe squeeze some paint out. Okay, so I'm interested into moving that oil around the surface of the clouds. So after a few minutes, was lovely Claire was saying from last week, she painted her sky, left it for a while, and then when she got back, things changed, things blended in a bit more. And that was lovely to see. That's exactly what could happen here. And that is very, very welcome. Okay, maybe somewhere here. If I'm touching the borders of my mountains, I'll pick up some of that violet paint. Sometimes it's advantageous how it looks, sometimes not. So give it a go and see what it looks like. If you don't like that violet, strong violet, maybe smudge it off. I think that might be something interesting. Okay. My mountain shrunk a little bit, but by the time I'll paint some darker tones, it will be back in no time. Sometimes cleaning it up too much. I've got a thin layer of paint, so I don't have to clean it really. That gives me an opportunity to see what the sky looks like. Okay. I think I could do with tiny bit more darkness back. So I'm back to blue gray, or I could have just used white. Back to ultramarine, back to Payne's gray. And let's just bring tiny bit more of that darkness. Is that dark enough? If your painting is reflecting, try to keep it more vertical. The more vertical it is, the more likely you will see less reflections. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Sometimes you overpaint it because you just paint too much. Okay, I think maybe a little bit, tiny bit back to my lighter color. It's not enough sky to have too many big strokes in there. Okay, might just stop there and see how it's will settle in. Any corners we can touch. If you need to paint a little bit further into your mountains, that's fine. We can always bring the darker tone back, but bringing the color of the sky, well, you got it, might be easier. Okay. And I'm going to do something similar for our steps. But we're going to slightly change the colors. So my brush, I'm just wiping it off. Again, it's not clean, but it's dry. I'm going to use my oil just to introduce it, if not on all steps. Sorry, I'm bringing the color with it as well, which is might be quite a good idea. From my not very clean brush. If it's clean color you're bringing in, clean oil, that's great. If not, okay, that's getting a tiny bit more clean, and then it's coming out again. Okay. Not overly diligently applying the oil everywhere, but most of the steps going to have that. And some of these big groups of rocks, if I'll paint that as well with some oil as well. That's giving me a lovely feel for that paler color. Now, steps are going to have some warmer colors and some cooler colors. If we start with the cooler colors, we can bring our warmer colors later. So I'm going to go for something similar. White or bluey gray with some extra ultramarine, a little bit of Payne's gray. Okay, I'm looking for perhaps something darker as some of my clouds. Okay, but I also want to have tiny bit of violet to it. I'm gonna start with this color first, and then I'll add a little bit of violet to it as well. Now, we wouldn't be able to track every single stone and its color. So we can identify some of the big shapes of the, let's say somewhere at the front here, I can see more of the bluish color for the rock here. Okay, somewhere there. So a little bit more intuitively, okay, something here. Maybe a little bit of a group of something paler blues there. Maybe a little bit on this rock. Might be something standing out. We haven't drawn yet. That will be fine as well. And then maybe this side, almost like a wall, like next to the path. Maybe this group is going to have something cooler. There might be more in the shadow. Okay. Maybe some of these will have a little more kind of bottom layer of them might have more of a shadowy, cooler color. The blue might not be dependent on the shadows, it might be just the type of rock and how it's appeared. Okay, maybe some of these ones could have a little bit of blue. And perhaps slightly more of the darker blue somewhere on the path. Okay. Maybe an occasional. I don't want the whole section staying later on in a warmer color, so maybe I'll just have a slight change. So I'm already planning the rhythm, how much blue I'm going to keep. And that blue doesn't look too bold blue because it's still against the orange, and it is next to the violet as well. Okay. Now, can I mix, can I add a little bit of violet to it? So I only put tiny bit on my brush. So if I put it on the side, this is how very little I've got it on my brush. So it's not going to suddenly overwhelm my gray and turn it violet-y. There will be a hint of it. Okay, I can always add more rather than add too much. Okay. It takes you longer to mix that, that's okay. Okay, so I've got more of a bluish, bluish violet now. And I can use this color, maybe even tiny darker version of it. When we're looking at some of the rocks, there's lots of dark shadows. So those dark shadows could be our outlines from that violet, or could be this extra new color we're using. So I think I might just use a tiny bit more violet, tiny bit more Payne's gray, tiny bit more. Might use a little bit of crimson. Sorry, yeah, alizarin crimson, bit of red. So any of those combinations, tiny bit more darkness. Okay. Because our layers are quite runny at the moment, when we start applying some thicker layers, they should give way to those thicker strokes. But I'm quite happily can paint some areas tiny bit more with this deeper color to create tiny bit of extra shadows. Often those shadows will be just created, they will become narrow lines when we start introducing lighter strokes. Right, anything else here? There's quite small. Okay, don't like them all being circles like. Okay, so maybe a little bit of something here. So just color started integrating a bit more. And also, can I put that color anywhere else on our landscape? Further down towards the mountains, we might have a little bit of rock going down the slope. Again, that might be just a starting point of some of the colors. Maybe a good time to test it against the darker slopes before we actually get extra darker paint. Those might be some of the highlights in there. Maybe testing some of these broken waterways, eroded borders. Okay. And maybe enough for now. So again, I'm going to clean my brush, wipe, take all that extra paint from it, bit of tips to clean it off. Now I don't need to clean it perfectly because we're going to paint some darker mountains for the next stage. So that will be enough to white as it is. Right, we haven't finished painting our path, but we're going to let it be for a moment. And I'd like us to start working into some darker tones. So we established a little bit of light on the clouds. We haven't quite established so much light on the steps, on the rocks, but we connected two colors. Okay, we kind of prepared the surface there. So now we're gonna go for our darker tones. So we had light, let's go for dark next, so we can have that sharper contrast. I'm going to pick up a slightly smaller filbert brush. Let's have a look, maybe something like this. I'm interested, can I do some of the sharper edges for the silhouette? So maybe this size, a tiny bit, maybe next size. Where is it? It's here. Okay, maybe, yes, maybe this one. And I'm going to try to see color into my mountains. Now, if I analyze the left, right, and center mountains, the centered one got more blues in it. Maybe below it, and its base here, I've got more violety, pinky, kind of purpley colors. But there is a lot of indigo and ultramarines I'm seeing here, perhaps interpreting those darks. When the slopes here might have some crimson mixed maybe with Payne's grey, maybe a little bit of violet, maybe some of the blue will come in, but very small quantity of it, okay? So the dominant colors for the left and right mountains probably will have that extra warmth. Right, I'm going to start with my central mountain, establish a bit more of a silhouette there. So I just put a bit of oil on my brush. Now this time I don't have to have it runny. I'm gonna go for maybe mid thickness for my paint. I need a little bit of white, mainly to keep my colors opaque. I don't want it white, but I'm going to start it and use the white as the base color. I could have used blue-gray, but just in case some of you don't have it, let's build it up together as well. So I'm gonna go for quite a bit of ultramarine. Okay, mixing with my white, it's getting nice and opaque. I'm gonna go for some Payne's grey. Will give me a lovely indigo. Okay. To make my range of blues, without washing my brush, I'm just adding more ultramarine to my brush. Again, on the screen it might not showing as much, but I can see the consistency of that blue stronger in comparison to my first mix. And to make it even stronger, more of a vibrant blue, I'm going to add a small amount of violet, so it just will cover up some of my gray and bring a little bit of extra violet to it. Okay, that's good. So next, I'm going to try to apply it to my painting and see how it will start bordering with colors and how it's going to sit against the orange. Okay, so looking quite nice and dark. It appears that some of the ridge of the mountain got more darker tone and perhaps tiny bit more lighter towards lower part of it. Not everywhere, but it might be the case that we might need to lighten it up or darken it at the top. So let's find a little bit of the silhouette here. If I'm hitting, touching the cloud, and picking up some extra white on my bristles, I can or wipe my brush or just load more darker tone, so that's kind of compensates for getting the color too light. Okay, don't over worry about too precise silhouette. Something there might be good. So almost like done a line. I'm gonna just paint over it into a shape. Okay, coming up to my mountain here top. Got a lovely, we can see more of the precise, we've just got a little smudge on the top from the cloud. So if I paint the mountain as it is first, okay, maybe something like that. I can always smudge the peak. Okay, maybe tiny bit more violet just to make that color slightly different. Okay, and can I put little bumps and imperfections on that corner here? Maybe sometimes a little more exaggerated. I can always flatten them. Don't want them to be too similar, kind of too the same repetition of height or the same gaps in between them. Again, something to look out for later on. Okay, I think some of this color is reflecting, so it looks lighter. It's all the same darkness for me here. Okay, so I'm going to paint it a little bit more darker here. And then I'm going to bring a slightly lighter color in between. So what I've done here, I've almost kind of created a valley, okay, with these strokes, with those shadows. And I'm going to get my blue-gray. Again, I could clean my brush, but I haven't got a lot of paint. It's not going all the way down my handle, so I've got a minimal amount. So if I were to mix my blue-gray with existing dark color and squeeze it from the root, it will give me a light enough color altogether. Okay, so and then I can start introducing it maybe somewhere in between, maybe pressure strokes first. They're looking quite like petals and a little bit silly, but we can blend them in after. Okay, so I'm just introducing that one further in first. We wanted to have a little more of that color, but it started to go slightly darker. My paint is running out and bristles, so that's good. So good advantage of our oils to gently change and smudge the color. Okay. I can use a darker color to smudge it back, or I can just persevere with my brush to bring the bordering colors here to a lower point. Okay. And to make my mountain to have a bit of a cloud going over it, I'm going to use my cloth, bit of a soft cloth. If I can put my finger around it, then I've got more of a precise area. I know where it's going. Well, approximately I can see it better rather than just using the cloth in itself. I quite like it working almost on the finger. So I'm going to smudge the border of my cloud and the peak of my mountain and see what's going to happen, and then I'll evaluate if I need more paint. Okay, this is okay, but maybe a little bit more. Maybe I need a little bit more paler color, so I can go for blue-gray, I can go for a little bit of paler white. Okay, maybe something there. Looks a bit similar to what we were doing last week. Can I go a little over it? If it's too much, this is quite nice actually, but if it's too much and you want to bring some of that shape back, just get your brush back, get some of that shape back. Sometimes you paint it on already smudged surface and it's that background is getting more smudged. Okay, this is quite good. I quite like that. Okay. And anything else, any other borders you might want to smudge? I know they're all quite sharp on the photograph. I feel like I can smudge maybe one of these. Maybe even bring a tiny bit of orange back. Maybe not too much, so I can just paint a little bit back of that color, but it stays more soft, the border with the mountain and the cloud. Maybe this border will be a tiny bit softer. Okay. Again, this is just little elements. We'll see how the whole picture will come together. Okay. Now, can we get some more violety darks, alizarin crimson and Payne's grey darks for our mountains? Again, I can clean my brush. I can just wipe it off. I don't have to perfectly clean it, as long as there's no big chunks of paint in there. We're going to have some very similar colors or similar darknesses here together. Reds and blues come really well together, so we're not going to make mud out of those colors. So that's all fine to go ahead. So I'm picking up a little bit more oil with whatever is left on my brush. And I'm going to go for alizarin crimson and some Payne's grey. And I need to have more alizarin crimson than black, than Payne's grey in here. Okay, so it appears dark, but if I start having a smudgy stroke, you will see more of those reds in it. Okay, and I can have a little bit more oil, and I can actually make it more runnier. That will be lovely for my mountains here. Look at that color here. It's dark, but it's quite runny. Okay, I've got some lovely depths to it. Okay, so quite crudely applied. Maybe some of the lower parts of the those darker shapes. We can look for some of the directions of strokes might remind us of the texture. Sometimes the more playful the strokes are, unexpected the strokes are, the more representational they are. So have a little play. I'm just pressing on the brush here. Okay, I'm just gonna come close to where I've been painting that ridge. Maybe overlap some of the colors as well. Okay, that's come out quite nice. I might even bring something tiny bit more darker coming this way. Right. Any more of that diluted crimson and Payne's grey? Can we apply it? I think some of my blue gone a bit too far, but I can deal with that. Maybe for some of those broken, moved rock. Okay. And perhaps even tiny bit alongside of the stream, because there might be some more exposed stone there, and next to the blue, so next to the greens, it might be looking quite dark as well. Okay. Gonna bring any of that darker reds to any of my stones here. I think I could benefit with a tiny bit more extra darkness here. Maybe there will be some cracks within the stone, some break, darker edges. Okay, where my paint run, I might just touch it up as well. Okay. I've done my super darks. And I can start adding my paler colors for the mountains now as well. Now, because I'm working at a reasonably small scale, I'm happy to use my brush. When I'll come to longer, bigger strokes of greens and flatter surfaces, I will use my cloth there as well. Right, so next I'm going to start introducing a little bit of warmer color. I'm going to have a tiny bit of hint of buff titanium. White is fine as well. And I will be adding some ochre, so if you don't use buff titanium, that will be all fine as well. A tiny bit of ochre, mixing it with my darker colors. Because my darker color was mainly diluted, there isn't much pigment in there. So adding a small amount of, or medium amount of lighter color doesn't, stays reasonably pale. So I might actually add more alizarin crimson, a little bit more of my Payne's Grey. Again, more of crimson than grey. Payne's Grey, because it stays quite solid dark with Payne's Grey. Right, tiny bit more lighter tone. I want to see not a big jump of light and dark, but I want to see a little bit of lighter patterns here coming up. Right, let's test it for some of those paler rocks on the base of the mountain. The color will be smudging with the blue, and that's our again advantage, because we can have the color mixing on the surface and connecting the dark blue area and those darker reds here. Okay, so it's at the moment lovely and smudgy. Hasn't got as much contrast, so I might need to bring maybe more darkness to my blue, or maybe a little bit more light to where I'm painting those areas later as well. Okay, so far I'm just connecting some of those shapes. Maybe even this area where the stream is going to be, I can always add a tiny bit of green there. Okay, some of those slopes. Okay, maybe some of that will go. Placing some of the strokes over the dark, let's say on top, it will give you a border of darkness around. Okay, so suddenly the lighter color stands out as a surface, and the darker color sits at the back. Okay, there might be different angles to my rocks here. The orange is lovely, partially showing through. Okay, just wanted to mingle the colors and see what's going to happen to them. Mingle the shapes. If it comes out slightly different to what it's on my painting, it doesn't matter. Okay. Maybe a little bit of lighter color on the left-hand side as well. It's quite a lot of dark, so if I go with a lighter color, it will smudge and will give me an in-between darkness. Okay, there's something going into those diagonals. Just a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit of texture. We're not going to get all of those details. You need to have a very big painting to define all the details and seeing some of those varieties. I think that might be enough for now as well. Okay, and now I'm going to touch up some of the lighter. We're going to create a little lighter pattern here. Going back to buff titanium. Not on its own, it's going to be too light on its own, so I'm mixing it with that same color and placing a stroke a little bit fresher. Okay, if I'll continue applying it, it will start getting muckier and it'll start getting lost. So I've placed one here and there's nothing happening. So I need that fresher color again. Coming back, so maybe a couple of touches with a brush and I need to load it again. I need to load the fresh color. Okay, so maybe something here will start lightening up a little, creating more of a volume. So if I would have put this lighter color first, instead of that in between tone, that volume would have been much more flatter. So so we've got dark, then a medium darkness, and it's a slightly lighter version. It stands out much better. And then these little groups of rock might have some more individual marks on them as well. It started to look more like rocks, which were carried by the water, the ice, the wind. And I'm using a darker paint, which is sitting at the back, to create those shapes for me. Sometimes when I overwork it, I need to wipe the whole area, or use a palette knife and scrape it off and start again. So then I can still see my orange background, I can still see some of the violets, and that's okay. Okay, maybe some more little shapes here at the base of this darker shape. There's almost the lower parts of the rocks we see more details, or a little bit more corroded, broken down edges there. Okay, and I might just touch up my darker mountain. Again, I'm just wiping my brush. I'm going to come back to some of this darker blue. I might need to mix more. If you're happy with your darker blue mountain, just keep it as it is. I'm going to just touch up mine a tiny bit. Just to have slightly sharper. Let's see if it will do that sharpness. Okay, not too much. Okay, maybe drop that corner. Okay, a little bit too smudgy to what I wanted, but I'll have to do. Also doesn't help that it is reflecting here. Okay, it's a bit more sharper here, but this is a bit soft. A little bit of violet with my blue. Maybe bring in a tiny bit of blue over as well. And I think I can afford to put slightly darker paint at the top as well. Maybe just a small amount. Again, it's not showing as much. If I'm turning the picture up like this, I can just see it a little bit more. Couple of key corners. Okay, that's a bit too pointy, but okay. Okay, right. Let me see if I can lift it gently up. Okay, it's showing just a tiny bit better. And I'm going to just gently tidy my sky next to my darker mountain. Now I can see where I'm happy with my shapes. Everybody will have an individual approach here. Depends what's happened on our sky, on our mountains. So I'm coming back to my blues, blue-gray, any of my palette color, bit of Payne's gray, ultramarine. I just wanted to touch a tiny bit here. Maybe a tiny bit sharper here. I do like that orange, but maybe not so much. And that edge got a little bit flat. So a little variation. I've got this lovely peak as well, so let's get rid of that as well. Okay, that's fine. Anything here for variety? That's when we can tweak and take our time on tweaking shapes. So if we paint overall shape of the sky, overall shapes of the mountains, establishing some of the colors, we can then come back and tweak as much as we want our silhouettes, our borders, our nuances, because we've done all the major shapes. Okay, I'm happy with the tops now. Good. Right, next, let's start mixing our greens. I've got my rough brush back. I'd like to mix some greens with that, but then I want to apply or smudge or kind of continue painting with my cloth there as well. So a little bit of fresh oil. Okay. And I'm going to get my white as my starting point. Some cadmium yellow. Okay, mix that well. There's a little bit of previous color coming through, as long as it's not overwhelming. Usually, if it's small quantities, it's absorbed by the new color. Okay, maybe just a little runny paint, so I need a tiny bit more pigment from both yellow and white. I'm gonna go for a small amount of emerald green. And that will dictate again how much more yellow I'll start adding. So I'm gonna go for my lightest yellowish green first. I want to have that lovely exciting color first on my surface. Okay, so it's taken me quite a while to mix it, but I'm happy with consistency now. There's quite a bit of paint on my brush. It's not too thick, but it's not transparent. It's not going to run. It's stays here in lovely fluid quantities, like softer, maybe like a toothpaste consistency. Okay, so this is going to be very bright, and because I don't have any other colors around it except my orange, it's not gonna look right, but I'm going to introduce that bold yellowish green, which will be surrounded by other greens. So I'm going around some of my rocks or future rocks. Okay, somewhere here. Can I find a little gap? Okay, try not to paint too precisely. This is more of a placing of the color in approximate location. Okay, somewhere here, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more somewhere here. And I'm going to start adding more greens. And if I just use emerald green, the color is quite still not a natural highlands or any natural environment type of grass. Might be a small amount of it might come in, but I might need more cadmium red in that. That makes the color much more toned down. And maybe a hint of ochre. Okay, that's quite nice. Now I just need to make sure it's not too brown. It's more towards the green, so I can test it out here. It's looking okay, so maybe some will be some more darker greenish tones, but this is looking good color. Okay, now my brush is quite rough, so I probably will struggle to make more of an even strokes with it, or more pointy, coming close to some of them borders, but I think that's okay for now. Maybe stretch it close to the path at the top. Okay, maybe finding some of the grasses or how the greens overlap in the path. Okay, so I'm almost suggesting some of the direction of the ferns here, perhaps. Maybe a tiny bit more close to the rocks. Okay. So I've blocked a little bit of color. To know what other colors I might need close to it, I think if I were to paint the opposite slope, which is much darker, it will offset a big chunk of orange, and it will give me an opportunity to say, okay, how much more light or dark I need to go for anywhere else in between. So I'm going to use this current green, or some of it. Okay, I'm going to add a small amount of emerald green again. So again, the color becomes too strong towards that prime green. Okay, so I can again tone it down with a bit of cadmium red. If it's becoming again too browny, small amount of ochre. Okay, if it's not dark enough, again small amount of emerald green till we have getting happy with the proportion. If you mix too much paint, don't worry about it. Kind of gather it together, squeeze the bristle, squeeze the brush, leave the chunk of paint on the side, and continue getting your colors mixed. I think I'll have to test this one out. I think that might be a little bit too pale. Maybe small amounts of it come to a couple of more lit up surfaces. Maybe somewhere in between here. But then I'm gonna go for a little bit more darker color. Okay, so again, repeat the process. Small amount of each color: emerald green, cadmium red, ochre, keep pressing on the root of my brush, so then there will be some lighter paint coming out and mixing well, so then when I start painting, it suddenly doesn't come out and surprise me with the color I don't want. Okay, so that's a better darkness. I want to have my brush might give me too many strokes. That's where my cloth is gonna come in. If I squeeze that color out, or even put some of that color on my cloth, almost like wipe my brush. Where is the cloth? Excuse me. Okay, and apply it. So where's the cloth on my finger there? Can I have more of an even smudge or a bit more of an even surface here? I think that paler, lighter color came in a little too pale, so I might work over it. I can leave a little bit of my purpley lines. I had quite exciting strokes of them. I've lost some of them and kept some of the boring angles, but again, that's okay. Maybe I'll come back to them later. Right, can I bring this green anywhere else up the slopes? So it starts integrating a little bit more. Maybe there's some more green somewhere above, on the sides. Even if you can't quite see it there, it will interact the color, wrong place. Will interact the color and up in that small V shape of a distant sub-valley. Okay, if I'll bring that color, it smudges in more naturally than a brush. If you're testing it out, it doesn't work for you, it's okay to use a brush. Okay, I'd love you to try things, but if you're giving it a go, you don't have to suffer or worry that you can't do it. It's okay to use a tool you're more happy with. Okay, maybe some of these ones will have a bit more green. So I've flattened this area, so I might have to get a bit more depth to that after. But I think that color could start coming a bit more here. I'm just turning my finger in that cloth to a narrow edge to a bit more wider one. To almost using pointy part of the nail. Yeah, run through the cloth. Can just about feel the shape of it there. So I had a little bit more of a narrower stroke there. Okay, any other paler greens alongside there? It's more of a hint of it. And I'm going to start bringing that green over and start smudging it with my current surface colors. Now if I bring it further in, it's going to start clashing. So in a way, I want to mix that lighter color, okay, with it, and keep one slope appearing different from another slope. Okay, so they've got connection in color, but they're also different. Okay, can use strokes or smudges different way. Okay, that's quite a nice one, but maybe a little too long. So not all strokes need to be along our vertical. To have more of a shape, sometimes change in direction is very important. Okay, or sometimes it smudges and gives you too much texture. That becomes too much as well. So I can smudge that. Okay, that's something slowly happening, but I'm not too sure what's happening at the front yet. That will be my waterfall. That's okay. Let's bring that in between color somewhere here. And maybe let's lose some of that fresh light. Okay. It's a reasonably dark color, this new green. So I might go for clean corner on my cloth and start with my yellow, kind of smudge the yellow out. So my yellow is not going to be so yellowish green. Not going to be so bold, but it's bringing light overall. So I can still top it up with a bit more thicker paint, but I think that sits a bit better. It's a little better. Okay. Some of these sharp borders, that's where my stream is going to be. Okay, I'll come back to that. Right, any other super bright areas? Okay. So I've got a little bit of a glow from underneath. I want some sunshine going at the top, so I might work into that. That's okay. Right, can I work into some more of the green? So can I get rid of most of my orange now? I can mix some more green straight away with my cloth. So if you want to use a brush as well, that's good. I'm going to go for emerald green and some violet. That will give me a lovely darker color. I'm mixing it on top of my other colors, as I didn't have much left there anyway. So it's in a way my emerald green and violet also includes a small amount of ochre, also includes anything else which could have been there. I think I might still need a bit of ochre, otherwise it looks too dark. Okay, let's give that one a go. Okay, good. As I said, if you prefer to work with a brush, that's absolutely fine. Sometimes unexpected things happen when you pick up a tool of a different size or different surface. So I'm painting, rotating my finger, moving my cloth about. Sometimes it scratches. This is a lovely scratch. This is where my wooden wedge could come in as well. Bringing some of that green through my steps because there might be some of the grasses in between them. Okay, I need to be careful not to put too many similar widths of strokes, yeah, so they don't stay too repetitive. I'll work more into the shape. Yeah. Okay, anything else a little bit darker this way? Turning, smudging, seeing what happens. Okay, that's a bit more similar size of the yellowish. Okay, here's some of my grasses. This is lovely. I think my more defined finger marks through the cloth give me some unexpected details. Okay, I'm ending up with a bit of finger painting. Okay. And some of this one, just tiny bit of a smudge so it doesn't have too many sharp borders here as well. So good build up. Good build up. We can start finishing things off. Okay. Right. Wooden wedge, 5 steps. While the paint is still soft, if we blocked it, especially quite a lot of it, finding the little corners, that will be a rhythm of lines. That will be the good proportions of the steps. Again, not a lot. If you're scratching, you're not sure about it, have a play, but it doesn't have to stay in big quantities. I think that's might be bringing some of that larger space, larger surfaces. We also will be putting some lighter tones on our steps. So wooden wedge could be a good idea of taking some of the paint off and allowing the lighter color to sit on top of orange rather than, let's say, our greens. Same you can do with a palette knife. You want to lift a little bit more or scrape something more precise. Okay, maybe a bit more of a direction. Okay, so it just gives me more. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Okay. There. Just trying to follow a little bit of the curvature of my path. Doesn't quite do the trick. Okay, good. And anything else on the opposite side? I think I could do is lifting some of that green. Remember where I might have been overpainting some of those possible broken borders. I can put a little bit more of that paler greys in there, paler violets in there, back. Okay. So this is nice. So the orange is still playing a good part here, but we'll be going even more shortly. Right, so now let's come back to some highlights. I've got smaller brushes now, which I'm gonna use some oil, and I'm gonna go direct with for my buff titanium. And I want to place almost that thickness of the paint as it naturally comes in. I only had a little bit of oil for my fresh clean brush. And I want to introduce some of that lighter color for my stones, just to see if that's going to be too light, or in some places it will work okay. Oh, I had a nice big rock here, but now I've got some beautiful grasses. So maybe I'll move it across somewhere here. Okay, maybe a little bit too light. A dab of violet. A dab of ochre. Okay, that's slightly darker version. Okay, let's test it somewhere else. I'm not going to clean this one up. I'm just going to introduce it elsewhere. Okay, and we'll start smudging with my other colors. Maybe still a tiny bit more darker. We can see we can make it paler, just going for direct buff titanium. I think maybe tiny bit more darker. Let's place this one here. Okay, that's quite nice, but it doesn't have to be everywhere super dark. That's maybe for that specific step. Okay. Maybe that rock will be somewhere here. Right, let's cover some of our orange, especially in big places, and see how that will give us shapes of other rocks about. Sometimes just following what's left out might be enough, or at least as a good starting point. Okay, keep coming back to my palette just to keep on that fresher color. The loads of blues, the loads of violets, the loads of greens. Okay, these are a bit too repetitive and boring, so let's combine them together. Okay, let's get this one come in here. Work maybe into some of the exciting, confident strokes of the top. They're slightly wider than I wanted them. But as long as I noticed, I can always paint perhaps my buff titanium partially over them, and it will start breaking that down into more narrower, suggestive stones there, so they're becoming less precise. Okay, more of a suggestive light. Was it just a wider step or surface or something else in there? Okay, so that buff titanium now on my mucky brush, on top of my mucky brush, is starting to happen. Gives us some exciting moments. Something over. Might have more of a lighter part of the path. Might come back to and keep the coolness of the path. Okay, maybe it's just turned a little bit away from the sun. Okay, maybe just a narrow line just to break that gentle shadow. I'm topping up my thick paint. So my paint now sitting on the surface of all these strokes. So I'm very gently pressing, trying to leave the paint rather than smudging. And okay, the moment I'm starting to pick up other colors, it means that I'm not just touching the surface. Okay, this is quite a nice corner. Maybe another step or reflective corner of this stone. Okay, this might be slightly darker now. Okay, that might need a bit more of a shadow next to that. Maybe a tiny bit more light here. Okay, somehow I'm picking up more green. Bit of fresh buff titanium and violet. Just play with a range of strokes from narrow ones to wider ones to have some of that surface represented and covered. Okay. Good, right. Anything else light at the front? Might put one more step or a bit of that surface somewhere here. Again, I'm happy with the feel of the painting now. How some of the colors come together. I think there are quite a bit of nuances to go, but if we don't overwork it, I think we can also finish it reasonably quick, but not overdoing it. If we overdwell on the painting, it might start being too busy, and we'll lose that freshness, that impressionistic feel for it. So I'm gonna go for a tiny bit of extra darker color again. I'm back to alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. Just to want to bring a couple of more shadows back, but there are loads of white colors, so it's going to smudge into a bit more darker paint. So I'll have to top it up. Just want a few more shadows back. few more grounded shapes. They're becoming too streaky. I'm just going to gently smudge them in so they just appear more of a flatter shapes. Okay, that starts to sit more strongly. The same for a couple of ridges, edges of the steps. This time my red and Payne's grey is not as runny, or maybe not very runny at all in comparison to how we started using it, the early stages. Where I'm working, there's still quite a lot of liquid-like paint, and that will sit well the new thicker layer. It will glide through it nicely. Just want to have a little play of some sort of definition here and there at the front, but then keep it more suggestive further away. Okay, tiny bit more darker paint again. It gets overwhelmed with lighter strokes, but most of my darks I prefer to keep at the front. If I'm adding anything at the back, maybe smaller quantities. Every stroke I make now picks up a range of colors which I come across. So I need to be patient and come back to my palette, kind of mix what's now my bristles, all that range of color, and continue again. Maybe do 1 or 2 strokes of color application, and again top up that color again. Otherwise we'll end up with a messy color. I still want my blues there, still want my violets in there, still want that range of colors being there. So I don't want to get rid of it, nor do I want to have a lot of smudged less clean surface. Okay, this is quite interesting. Can I put anything extra darker red as little happy dots? Might just put a couple of few accents here and there around my steps. We get in there. Right, couple of more of those happy dots, happy little full stops. Again, you might need to see where they will come. As they're part of the grasses, or they're part of the steps. Is there somewhere the rock somewhere within the greens? Sometimes it's just a little accent of a bit of punctuality, yeah, a bit of that mood, that little bit of extra tension. Maybe not so dark somewhere here, but more the direction. Okay, just sharpens up some of the areas and keep suggestive the others. I think I could do with a couple of more strokes, maybe a bit more here. Bring some of those rocks back before I top up the fresher greens there. And I think that might be also a lovely color for my brook, my stream, where I have overpainted. Now I'm painting over some of the greens, and that mingles the color, smudges the color, and give me the shadows more exposed. Bank here as well. Maybe slightly more varied silhouette of these rocks. Okay, that's good. Might even add a small amount of white for the waterfall there or something. We'll see. Maybe a tiny bit more up, just so it doesn't look all the same downwards. Okay, good. Now I want a tiny bit more, some of this paler color. That was some buff titanium and violet. Tiny bit more of that violet here. Maybe some of that alizarin crimson for a little bit of color for the erosion. Okay, I can just see more color than light or dark, which is good. But I can also bring a tiny bit of light if needed for variations. Okay, if you started to put those marks and they looking a bit too much out of place, a bit or too much, both. Either if you're not quite happy with them, smudge them back, keep them slightly darker, keep them more mixed with the green, so they are suggestive. The green should be dominating there, just a little bit of extra support, a little something, not just plain banks. That's all we need. Another way of painting them is just very, very gently touching the surface. I think you might again not quite fully see what's happening there. Okay, just small amounts. Maybe I'll bring a little bit of it here as well. Okay. And I want some fresh, a little bit more cleaner strokes for my middle area for my greens. Probably similar color, but I think cleaner, thicker stroke in a few places will be showing that juiciness of light, that extra exciting environment. Also will give me a tiny bit more extra depth for the middle ground. Just washing my brush because I want to use the same width brush here. Okay, so quite a bit of white, quite a bit of my cadmium yellow, small amount of emerald green, small amount of ochre, okay, nice and thick paint, like paste, more of a thicker version of Two Space, more of a chunkier, more of a solid creamy. Okay, and I'm just going to put a little mark to see what the color is like against my current surface. Okay, that's quite light, so maybe a tiny bit more darker still. Cadmium red, ochre, tiny bit of green. Okay, careful not to over darken it, which I might have done. Let's have a look. No, that's okay. Okay, so that's again might give me slightly thicker strokes in between maybe some of the surfaces. For example, here between some of the rocks, I just want to put some more of that green. Okay, I can just touch it up in between some of the grasses, almost just change the direction of the strokes. Quite like what's happened to the grasses here, so I'm happy to keep them here. Okay, maybe use it tiny bit more here, nice and thick, really applying, kind of scooping up all the paint, putting it, squeezing it from all of that brush, all of it from the roots, and just putting the thick paint on the tip, and then placing it in a lovely little chunk. Again, it's maybe not quite showing as much yet on a screen, but it's actually changing that movement with that a little extra depth within the painting. Okay, that tiny bit of light further back. Okay. And maybe just improve some of the greens on the left hand side. Okay, just slightly more variety. I might put more of a grassy or more of a playful strokes to vary my greens here. Okay, any of my steps which started to look a bit too perfect or too opened, uh, not suggestive enough, I can gently cover with a bit of green and take that attention tiny bit further away. As loads of beautiful plants love living on the rocks, thrive in that environment. Okay, just checking anything else is going to be here. So I'm looking at the whole picture more than any individual details. So if I start looking at some of the details, I'll go, ooh, this is a bit vague, and this is a bit too rough, and this is a bit too obscure. But if I step further away, that will start looking quite atmospheric and exciting. And that's what we're aiming for. Maybe a tiny bit of light somewhere here, gently approaching. And I think if I were to wipe my brush and with whatever left, very little left, I think if I were to put a tiny bit of paler color on the tops of those slopes, what I wanted to do earlier, it might be just enough to show some light going up my right hand side mountain. I think I quite like that one. So that light is kind of got connections with the opposite side of the valley. Okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. I'm happy with that. I just add a tiny bit of that water for the waterfall. If you have quite a lot of paint and you want to put the water, maybe let your painting dry for 2-3 days, and then you can place tiny bit of white in them without smudging it too much into the greens. Alternatively, very thick paint, no oil, just really thick impasto white, chunky, chunky, chunky. You can test it on one of your surfaces if you want. Unfortunately, on top of my white paper, you're not going to see it, but I can test it on my grey here. Okay, a very thick paint. The thicker the paint, the more likely you're not going to bring the color which we're painting over to the top surface. So I might just about to find that waterfall somewhere there. And that might be coming. Okay, maybe another little bit. And I might do a bigger drop here. Maybe another tiny, tiny, tiny little drop somewhere here. Now I've lost my valley further up where I wanted to have that fill for it there. But I'm happy with how the painting is looking, so I'm not gonna do it for the sake of recreating the shape of the valley there. So I think I might just keep it as it is. Or if I would have wanted to have more of that depth shown, I might have put tiny bit more, yet actual darker color. Sorry, I've just messed up my lovely green. With that little white stroke. Okay, I think that's better. And I'm happy to stop at that. I've got some exciting colors going. I've got some beautiful contrasts. Not too much details, but there's enough of small contrast attentions there. We've got that movement going. Very exciting. It does look like a path. And then it turns us back to our mountain and brings it back. Maybe some of these darker tones could come back. I might give it, a day or two. Maybe some of a little bit of darkness will come in. And then the water and the bank of the water. I'm quite enjoying the white, small amounts of it. It gives that extra depth for the bank there, and then it's again rotates it back and brings it back to our painting. Thank you very much for today. I hope you had fun. There's quite a lot of things happening today, so hopefully it's not too overwhelming. Take a step at a time. You don't have to paint it all in one go. Maybe just give yourself a break. Work on some darks, a break, greens, a break, steps, a break, a bit of combination, a break. And then it's becoming a little bit more achievable steps for you. Okay, but I'll look forward to seeing your work in progress and look forward to seeing how you get on. Thank you.